Burnout is when our resources run so low that you're not able to do anything.
But also there's this controversial discussion about how it's a this generation thing. And we used to not burn out. There was no such thing.
We assume that rest will lead to complete recovery. When it's pathological, we mean that there is some harm done to the body, wherein even if you rest, you may not recover to your old stage.
Once I ran up 6 floors and my heart rate didn't change, and I was like,
What happened?
guys, I'm fit! This is the definition of fitness.
Our brain does not differentiate different types of work. It's
Threat is
still
threat.
work. Threat is threat. Just know that you're tired and you will slow down. Recover and then get back. Burnout happens when you don't give yourself enough time to recover, rest, and then come back.
Hi Sid, welcome to Call Me Hopeful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Today I wanted to talk about burnout. So, couple of reasons. One, I've been reading a little bit about like fight and flight and things like that. So I have heard that it can be really, really serious. But on the other hand, some people throw the word around, and then consequently a lot of people then don't know when to take it seriously, when not to take it seriously. And so I just sort of wanted to clear up that picture a little bit. And I wanted to speak to you about it because I wanted to understand it from a scientific perspective. And then I know you're also interested in mental resilience, which to me makes perfect sense in terms of how to handle it. So then I wanted to get into that. So first, from a scientific pathological space, what is the definition of burnout?
Everything that is pathological was at one point physiological, which means it is normal, it is expected. So all physiology taken beyond its limits is what becomes pathological. So I'm glad you made that distinction. And burnout is no different, because essentially our body is meant to fight against stress. That's what it is meant for. And stress would mean any new change that happens to us, anything that you're not comfortable with. And once you figure out how to get comfortable with that, we call that growth. So stress is a good thing. You want to be stressed in life. But suppose you are in a situation where you're too stressed out. If something is too new, too difficult, or too fast, then our body does not have the resources to fight it. That's when stress becomes problematic. And that's when our body has to go through certain things it doesn't really want to in order to deal with it. And if it is still not able to deal with it, that is when stress turns into trauma. Burnout is when our resources run so low that you're not able to do anything. And it can look like several different things. It can look like exhaustion, it can look like fatigue. But in the spectrum of dealing with stressors, our body gives us enough warnings. So nobody goes from optimum to burnout straight away.
When you use the word burnout, do you, obviously everyone's different, but just for us, when we're using the word burnout, are we talking about when it's reached pathology?
Yes, absolutely. Now, when we say something has reached pathology, it means it has done harm.
Yeah.
Right. So feeling tired is not harmful. Even feeling exhausted is not harmful, because we assume that rest will lead to complete recovery. When it's pathological, we mean that there is some harm done to the body, wherein even if you rest, you may not recover to your old stage. That's what it means by pathological, and that's what burnout does. So you're never supposed to reach that burnout level. The tricky thing, though, in life is that how do you know? Right? And that's why people push themselves. They always underestimate the damage that something can do. And how else will you know until you push yourself to that limit? So it is a double-edged sword. We do want to push ourselves to find out what we are capable of. But at the same time, we don't want to do lasting damage. So the best way forward is to have constant check-ins
Mhm.
with yourself. That, oh, are you tired? Just know that you're tired and you will slow down, recover, and then get back. Burnout happens when you don't give yourself enough time to recover, rest, and then come back.
This is a slightly scary thing, but I think it's important to bring it up. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. But like the extreme end of burnout can actually kill you.
Yeah.
And I know it's related to the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So if you could just shed a little bit light on the thing, because as far as I know that, so fight, flight, freeze is when there's perceived threat.
Yes.
And then the other side is when you're resting and digesting, which means now your body has the time to spend energy digesting the food, rebuilding energy.
Yeah.
And burnout is when fight, flight has shut down and your body's like, we are resting, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And I've heard that sort of when you don't realize how bad it is, you can die.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So the differentiation was very well put. Sympathetic and parasympathetic are both part of a system called as the autonomic nervous system. This is an inbuilt protocol that is installed in your body. You are born with it. You don't have to learn it. Every baby, as soon as they are born, they already have that sympathetic and the parasympathetic drive. And the parasympathetic is what keeps your body running as a baseline. So it's also called as a vagal tone because it's tonic. It is going on in the background forever. That's what keeps your heart beating, your food digesting, your lungs breathing. You don't have to be consciously aware of it. But our environment is constantly threatening us. There's always something changing somewhere around us. So sympathetic keeps spiking up. So imagine parasympathetic is a straight line below and sympathetic spikes keep coming up so that we are always alert of what can kill us. Now, over time, our body develops this capacity to keep going into sympathetic, resolving a problem, and coming back into parasympathetic. The issue happens when we are unable to come back into parasympathetic. We're unable to come back to rest. So then we go into a state of tonic sympathetic activity instead of tonic parasympathetic, which in layman terms, you can say you're always on edge. You're always tensed up. Which means at some level, your brain and your nervous system thinks that there is something about to attack us, even if there isn't.
So, tiger, freak out, sympathetic nervous system.
Great, useful.
Tiger goes away, parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly worried that the tiger's still hovering, then you will stay freaked out
in that sympathetic state.
Forever.
Even if you come back home. And then every time a curtain moves, you'll think tiger. So you are never resting. You are never at ease. So this concept of home is a great metaphor because parasympathetic is home.
Yeah.
And that home could be a physical space. That home could be a person. That home could be a state of mind.
Security and safety.
Security and safety. So how you create that state of home is equated with when are you in parasympathetic? When can you relax? It is very important for us to relax because that is where all the reserve building happens. So as you said, rest and digest. So when you eat food, the amount of food that gets digested depends on how parasympathetic is your system in. So if you're in sympathetic, you're not going to digest. So people who
get
are
constipated.
Yes, exactly. So there's a disease called irritable bowel syndrome. If you've heard of it, IBS. A lot of people have it. And some people have it transiently. In fact, I would say that everyone in the world has had it at some point. If you feel like going to the loo 2 minutes before an exam, that is a very small, minuscule bubble of IBS acting up right there, right? Because you are supposed to be in parasympathetic, you suddenly go into sympathetic, and there is a dysregulation that happens between your sympathetic and parasympathetic. So this is called as autonomic dysregulation. And whenever there is dysregulation, your body does things it is not supposed to do at that point. And once you start looking for it, you will find autonomic dysregulation all over your body. Because every single organ in your body is controlled by both sympathetic and parasympathetic. And I mean every single organ, from your eyes to your skin to your throat to your heart, lung, liver, kidney, bones, nerves, brain, everything. So if you are in autonomic dysregulation, you can pick and choose which of these organs will get affected first is kind of up to your own system.
Mhm.
But different people will experience this in different ways.
And they're all signs.
They're all signs. So you can have sudden hives jumping out of your skin. You can have rashes. You could have acne. You could have stomach problems. You could have sudden breathing problems. I've seen patients with panic attacks suddenly being unable to breathe. You'll feel your heart racing. You might get blurring in your eyes. All of these different things are signs of autonomic dysregulation. And that's because your body is unable to shift from sympathetic back to parasympathetic. When you take autonomic dysregulation to its extreme and your body is unable to come back down and you're constantly in that state of stress, eventually you run out of reserve, right? So this can affect different organs differently. Now, suppose if it affects your heart, there's a condition called stress cardiomyopathy, which basically means that your heart has been pumping against stress for so long that it sort of starts expanding and it starts growing weaker. When it comes to the brain, chronic stress leads to increased cortisol, increased inflammatory markers, and that is one of the major triggers to start off depression. Chronic anxiety can lead to changes in the way you think, the changes in the way you cope, and ultimately one of the worst outcomes is suicidal thoughts. And I have to give a trigger warning here, but it is important to talk about because chronic stress does lead to our own mental barriers breaking down, because the thoughts around self-preservation are inherent in our brain. Every one of us wants to do what is best to protect our life. But chronic stress over a long period of time can have impact even on those self-defensive mechanisms. And that's one of the worst things that can happen. And that's the ultimate way of autonomic dysregulation. So all the way from small hives jumping out of your skin to this is the entire spectrum that chronic stress can do.
So it's a really big spectrum.
It is.
And we get lots of signs and we should look out for them. Okay, and we're going to talk about how to look out for them and those sorts of things. So this was from a more scientific point of view. But the thing is, all of this is just naturally linked to society and everything that is going on around us as well, right? Because perceived threat is coming from outside.
Not always.
Not always, but as in it's coming from an experience of outside that is now become a perceived threat. So now even if there is no lion, first the lion came, it scared me, I didn't manage to deal with it.
Yeah.
Now even though there is no lion, my mind is telling me what if, and so whether physically the threat is there or not, my mind believes there is a threat, therefore I am stressed.
Correct. You don't even have to see a lion though, even in the first place.
Okay.
You might have just heard of a lion or seen a video of a lion.
Or someone's told you.
Or someone told me about a lion. Ghost stories are like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I've never seen a ghost, but I'm still scared. Especially if I'm going out at night alone and I hear something suddenly, my mind will bring back every horror movie I've ever seen. And I will go into a sympathetic state despite having no proof that ghosts exist. So you don't actually need a physical experience to live that reality.
Okay, so there are kind of three main things that I wanted to touch upon. One is that when you look on the internet, there's a lot of conversation about how burnout is systemic.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to touch a little bit on that, but mostly I wanted to see what can we actually do about it.
Yeah.
Because on an individual level, most of us can't make systemic change. And when systemic change happens, it'll happen.
Yeah.
but we still have to live through then,
Yeah.
right? But also there's this controversial discussion about how it's a this generation thing. And we used to not burn out. There was no such thing. Like you said, the problem doesn't actually have to have happened to you, right? Anything that our mind perceives as a threat, the nervous system will activate because it wants to save you. So I guess that on some level, because of the expectations that society now sets on being the best, creates so many perceived threats. Your first job has to be the best. You have to get the job at your first job. You have to be fit, be beautiful, be strong, find love, all of these things much sooner than maybe was expected before.
One of the things that everyone needs to know about the brain is that it translates everything into physical reality. You read a story, it becomes physical reality. A horror story will have those physical symptoms on me. A sad story and I will cry. So those are all real things that happen. Our brain can translate it. It's not magic. It's just physiology. The more real it becomes, the better the brain can learn from it. If it's not real, then it can't really learn from anything. So if you tell me a story of how you climbed Everest and you tell me of your struggles and how you overcame them, if I can imagine it, that means that I have now learned from your experience much better. So when I go to climb Everest, I will do a better job because now theoretically I've already lived that experience through you. And so
to some degree,
exactly. And much more than I would have if I hadn't spoken to you at all. So it makes learning more efficient. So empathy is not really a high moral goodwill kind of thing. It's the most efficient way of survival.
Thank you.
Right?
I think it's a tool,
yes.
And it is just a very effective tool once you learn how to use it. And it is not charity.
It's not charity. Nothing in nature is charity. No one is good to anyone for just being good. Being good is a theoretical concept that human beings have come up with in order to feel good, which in itself is transactional. It's fine. But what is interesting is true selfishness actually looks a lot like very ethical behavior. There is a reason that highly ethical behavior is encouraged in the long term because that's what true selfishness is.
Because it builds society.
Exactly. You do good to others and they'll do good to you. Over 50 years, everyone benefits. You steal from them, they'll steal from you. In 50 years, no one benefits. So if you're truly selfish, you will be kind to others. Only people who have lived through 50 years and who have the foresight to look at it long term can understand this. So it's still selfish, but the part of the brain that understands this is different. So the primitive limbic emotional part of the brain can only see selfishness in the short term.
Yeah.
Right? But the prefrontal cortex can think of things in the long term. So it's still selfish, but it's just selfishness from a different part of the brain. That's all there is to it. Now, when we talk of threats, earlier, the kind of threats that we were dealing with were more physical,
tangible,
and a little meta, but it's social. Like, oh, my husband's brother is plotting against my family, so let me, that kind of stuff. But it's still tangible. It is still in the environment. It is still something that you can experience in our lived space. Once we go digital, our brain doesn't know we've gone digital. Digital as a concept does not exist in neurophysiology. What is digital? It's still real. So if I have 100,000 followers, that number is meaningless. Our brain can never perceive of 100,000 people. What does that even look like? I've never seen 100,000 people. Forget a million. So it all becomes one person. That's how our brain sees it now. So when you get a bad comment on Instagram, that's a threat. Because someone you know and someone you value, because it's clearly you're doing a lot for this hypothetical person, is now angry with you. And now you feel upset. You're threatened. Somebody is doing some great thing on Instagram. You're jealous of them. You wish you had that car. That's a threat. What we don't understand in today's life is that we are never resting. Ever. Everything that we do, even in the name of rest, is actually threat. So you take a break from work and you scroll on Insta. You are still in sympathetic. Our brain does not differentiate different types of work. It's
Threat
still
is threat.
work. Threat is threat. So in today's world, most of the things that we do, we are in sympathetic. We are not truly relaxed.
So I guess what you're saying is maybe something that people know but they forget, that people equate work to stress or whatever, but it's more helpful to look at it from threat or no threat, and to understand that when we say threat, now it means many things, not just something physically harming us. And for us to sort of understand whether or not you're consciously thinking about this, you are on some level, I want to make my parents proud, is actually I need to be the best. Because you're thinking, I need to make my parents proud. How do I make my parents proud? By being the best. But what does being the best in this world actually mean? Before, it was my 50 classmates because I didn't know the rest of the world existed. Now, I know the rest of the world existed. So automatically, best has become that much harder. And so all of this, whether it's in your work, whether it's in school, whether it's in the sports you play, to realize all of this is neurologically perceived threat, which is not necessarily a bad thing, in the sense you don't have to be scared of it. You have to be aware of it so that then you can regulate accordingly. And that's what I want to get into next in terms of being able to, I guess some of it is just thinking about these things in the meta, and then it's about clocking your body's signs to it, maybe. Would you say?
Yeah.
And then building mental resilience towards it.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'd like to really simplify it, right? Because I feel when you take in too many things at once, nothing gets done. So let's simplify it to what is resilience. Since we've already spoken about sympathetic and parasympathetic, let's explain it from that context. You are in baseline parasympathetic. You get a stressor. Resilience is the ability to go into sympathetic, deal with that stressor, and come back into parasympathetic as quickly as possible. Now, there are two aspects to resilience. One is that the level of stressor that is required to trigger a sympathetic response should keep going higher. So higher the resilience, the more you can handle at your parasympathetic level. You don't even need to go into sympathetic.
Okay. Gym reference for
brilliant
people.
Love it.
Right?
Yes.
So I get onto a treadmill at 8. It spikes my heart rate to 120. And then once I get off 8 and I come back to 5, it comes down. I keep working on this. Eventually, 8 should not spike my heart rate to 120. It should spike it only to 100 or whatever.
Correct.
I need to go on 10 to spike it to 120.
Perfect.
Bit by bit, my resilience is building to the point where maybe on an 8, my heart rate doesn't really go up much.
Doesn't even
at
make
all.
a difference.
It doesn't
Correct.
make
You're
a
still
difference.
at 60, you're going at 8, no worries.
Once this happened to me, I climbed up 6. So I lived on the 6th floor and the lift stopped working. And I remember that a lot of times I used to climb up and I'd be like, and then once I ran up 6 floors and my heart rate didn't change. And I was like,
what happened?
Guys, I'm fit. This is the definition of fitness. Anyway, yes.
But
so
that's exactly
resilience.
It. Exactly. So that's resilience. And resilience does not come overnight. Right?
Yes.
Of course. Because if you hadn't climbed those stairs before, you would not have been able to. And even then, if instead of 6, I asked you to climb 30 floors, your heart rate would go up. So that's a really important thing about resilience, is that it is not a static number. It is subjective. It is dynamic. It keeps changing. Everyone has an upper limit. So resilience is not this all-encompassing skill that equates to immortality, right? So resilient is not one definition that will stick with you forever. It's constantly changing.
Also, I may have resilience to run upstairs, but I may not have resilience to do deadlifts.
Exactly.
So it's also
That's
in
another
that
thing
sense.
about resilience, is domain specific. But in general, all your physical resilient activities, resilience building activities, does tend to translate into some mental resilience as well.
Just generally, right? Because
Exactly.
working on resilience is a whole other...
My favorite example is doing a plank.
Hmm.
Right. So when you start doing a plank, a straight plank, for the first 5 seconds, you're fine. The next 30 seconds, you're questioning your life. And the last 15 seconds where you're, that point where your legs start to shake and you're really wondering, what am I doing with my life? Why am I here? What is the point of it? Do I really want to be healthy at all? All of those questions come into your head. So that last 5 minutes where, say, you have a target of 1 minute, those last 5 seconds where you really want to push and say, no, I will not give up. Every time you do that, your brain is learning a new skill where your body's telling you to stop, but you don't. And then you cross that line.
Correct.
It's just learning that new skill. And the next time you can go up to 1 minute, 5 seconds.
And also building resilience in any domain will give you practice at just building resilience in general.
In general. Absolutely. So we were talking about...
That's another good way of looking at it. If it's easier for me to build resilience in this domain, I should start here.
Lean in.
And then,
Yes.
then do the harder ones.
Yes. So one of the aspects of resilience was you'll be able to do those same challenges without going into sympathetic.
Correct.
The other aspect of resilience is, suppose you do go into sympathetic, how long are you going to stay there? Or are you going to come back down to parasympathetic quickly? That is also a function of resilience. I have a theory, which is that all people are good at one of these two more.
Okay.
So some people are calmer in most situations, but when they do quote unquote freak out, they have trouble. They have trouble coming down back to calmness. But there are others who are very good at panic solving, but they will panic solve everything. They will keep going into hyper mode, solve everything and come back down to normal. I feel that everyone is on one of these two camps more. And they need to identify themselves and learn the other skill as well. For me, it's the first camp. I will not freak out for most situations, but if something does make me anxious, I would not be at my optimum. I would need to step back, regulate, then come back and handle it. I don't do very well in extremely panicking situations. But because of that, the number of things that make me panic are very less. So I need to work on the other one. I need to learn how to stay calm even when I'm panicking or come back down quickly. So resilience has these two aspects to it. Yeah. What were we talking about before?
How to slowly start building resilience and becoming aware of the signs of burnout to actually do something now to be able to, work at it. Because I feel like I think it's very important to understand the base foundation of the concept, and then tips and tricks become specific to you. If I just read tips and tricks and I don't necessarily understand the foundation on which this tip and trick is based on, then I'm not going to be able to individualize it. For example, meditation and breathing, right? People tell you should do it, but I've tried it. And what I realized is that there are few things that I wish someone had told me about it before. If you are really panicky and you are trying to calm down, 2 minutes of breathing is going to do nothing for you. Okay, your body needs more time in safety to cue safety. So no matter what you're feeling, you have to breathe for at least 10 minutes consistently. Otherwise, your body is not going to know that you started breathing. So 2-minute breathings, and then you give up on meditation as an entire practice. You're just cutting out more things in your life that could have been helpful because you've given up on them. And I don't blame you because you're feeling really horrible. And so you need something to make you feel better or something to work for you. So when I'm looking for solutions for burnout, I think you spoke about it. The fundamental thing that I need to do is cue safety.
Yeah.
And if you could just, give a few real life examples, because now the problem is we don't even know we're not safe.
Correct.
So now if we are not being able to understand what threat is, how do I cue safety? Because if I think my Instagram scrolling is safe, it's not. So how can we start to understand in this meta world of perceived threats, safety?
I'm going to break this down into 3 parts. Number 1 is awareness. So what I would recommend is that you start visualizing yourself on a needle. It's like a speedometer, where on the one side is sympathetic, on the other side is parasympathetic. And try to become more and more self-aware of, hey, where are you on that spectrum right now? Understanding that you can never be fully parasympathetic all the time or fully sympathetic all the time. You're always somewhere in the middle. And once you start doing this exercise, it surprisingly becomes easier. It's not that difficult because we do have that self-awareness. It's just that we don't acknowledge it. And
we can't do it for 1 week and figure it out, right?
It takes some time.
So give approximation so that people don't give up too soon.
Absolutely. So there are two things involved here: how long and how well you do it. The how well part is tricky because sometimes when you ask yourself, how are you? You tend to lie because you have this story about yourself saying that you're a happy person or you're an anxious person or you're a sad person. Whatever it is, you will create stories to fit in with that narrative. I found that it's harder to lie on paper. So if you want to truly start identifying yourself on that needle, you have to start writing down. So start writing down if something has happened. Don't try to conclude. Don't try to fix on what action should you take. Just write down what happened and spend some time with it.
I feel like even numbers are helpful.
In the sense?
Like on a scale of 1 to 10.
Sure.
And if you don't allow yourself to make a story out of it, then you'll give a number more honestly without trying to be like, this will lead to this, will lead to this.
Correct. The reason that we lie is because we want to attach it to something else. We want to think of next steps. But just taking that in isolation, it's much easier. And I found that writing it down means a lot of other things come out that you might not have noticed initially. And then based on that, you can figure out that, oh, you know what? I did feel bad in that moment, or I was angry at that person, which you would have never admitted to yourself. So that will help you explain, okay, maybe I am a little more sympathetic than I thought. Once you figure that out, that awareness, you will start doing it even when you're scrolling. So it's not that all reels or all posts or all tweets will make you angry. There are some that will make you happy. So you're fine. But there are some that make you really upset. And then you're confused. And then you're finding something funny, which in fact I think is more harmful. Because give an emotion a time.
Give your body time to feel the thing.
Absolutely, right? It's so confusing. You read a post about Gaza, Palestine, and then you're reading a funny reel, watching something, you're watching cat memes, and then somebody sends a funny. It's just all over the place, and we don't even realize, but your brain is thinking, what is going on in the outside world? Because what physical situation can lead to such a roller coaster?
Correct.
It's never happened before, ever. Even a movie will give you 3 hours to deal with that.
And it'll take you through that arc and that journey in a particular manner.
So why were you crying 5 seconds back and laughing now? It's unhealthy from that perspective. So just stepping back, realizing that this is what is going on in your brain itself, I feel is half the battle won. Just awareness. The second half is that just like how if I tell you to lift 300 kgs right now and you've not ever gone to a gym, that would be pretty bad advice. Similarly, I feel that emotional regulation is a learned skill.
Mm-hmm.
And telling someone to breathe when they're having a panic attack is kind of unfair, right? It's literally the equivalent of, Asha, just lift this 300 kilos. What do you mean you've never gone to the gym? You've seen other people do it. Why can't you do it? It's ridiculous. So the time to practice regulation is when you are safe.
Yeah.
Not when you are having a panic attack. And so if you find yourself likely that you will have to lift 300 kgs at some point in the future,
Start going to the gym.
Start working out. Absolutely. Start going to your emotional gym way earlier. Start practicing. And like everything else, it gets easier. So then there are skills. There are proper developed skill sets. There are toolboxes for emotional regulation. If you look for it, you'll find it. You've never looked for it. So once you start doing that, you'll find it much easier to navigate a complex emotional situation.
I think what you said about the awareness bit and the sort of understanding the concept of threat and safety along with the awareness tips that you've given us will then sort of create a context for even those 5 tips to reduce burnout posts, right? Because then you can sort of contextualize it for yourself, would you say?
You can. So another interesting way of navigating it is, instead of focusing too much on self-awareness, you can focus on environment awareness. So, and this is actually easier. So whatever situation you're in, you can classify them as safe, threat, and there's this interesting zone in the middle, which is curiosity, growth, question mark, should I not? And that is where all the interesting stuff happens.
That's also where the resilience building happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think the other important thing to remember is, like you said, taking risks with a safety net.
Exactly.
Is
perfect.
I tell people, let your child lose at chess.
At?
Chess.
If
they're 5 years old, don't let them win at chess. Because if they lose around you, it's safe. So I think that's a really important thing to remember when you're trying to figure this out, is that if you're trying to actively build resilience beforehand, you're not struggling, you're not going through a terrible thing. But if you want to practice, if you want to go to that emotional gym, then a good way to do that would be find a safe space, mentally, physically, whatever, and then do something uncomfortable or
That's
hard.
True. Here's okay. I'll flip the question. The only reason gyms work is because you have a home to come to. If you're at the gym all the time, that's also going to be exhausting. So I feel like
don't work on emotional regulation all day, every day.
Absolutely. So the biggest, I feel like one of the biggest harms that happen to people is when they consider a growth situation or a threat situation and confuse them for home and think that, oh, I will find rest here. And when they don't, then it affects them even more. Rest should be very clearly rest. Like every fiber of your being should know that I am safe now. As soon as you make that very clear, everything else becomes okay. If you don't have that, that's when I feel fundamentally you feel wired. You are in sympathetic all the time because where are you going? So for me, that really worked.
Okay. Yeah. And I think home is home irrespective of domain.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's also very important to remember, that I don't necessarily have to, suppose I'm feeling stressed at work, I don't need to feel unstressed at work, because that might not be where I can get to right now. When you say home is home irrespective of all the other things, that means it just has to be the safe feeling.
Absolutely.
So your home will save you irrespective of if it's a lion, if it's work, if it's a bad post on Instagram. Everything.
Yeah.
And to not try and counter it exactly opposite.
And which is why if there is something wrong with home, it becomes more urgent to fix that. Because more than all the other problems, this is going to affect you more. And so you might have seen if somebody's having, say, not a great family life, they might consider work as home.
Yeah.
Sympathetic, parasympathetic
Whatever
wise.
your home is.
Right.
We won't make any.
Right. But you have to identify what is
your home.
What is your parasympathetic space? We won't even call it home. I think home has a lot of other connotations. But what is your parasympathetic space? If you think about it, in your entire 24 hours, how many hours are you resting? It's surprisingly little, because even when we're eating food, which is supposed to be rest, we're still
watching TV,
watching stuff. And yeah, so there is a chronic sympathetic activity going on in the background pretty much throughout, which is much more than what I would say happened 100 years ago. And so that's why I believe there is some truth to it, which is maybe our grandfather, grandmothers were not so sympathetically activated as we are now.
Because their environment just required them to function differently. Now we just...
Correct.
It's not... So, yeah, it's not like to blame this generation, but it's a reality we have to come to terms with. We are more like this because of our environment. And only once we accept that can we do something about it. So
it's not about blaming at all.
Yeah.
It's about empowerment.
I feel like sometimes people my age feel bad that we are like this. A, we're upset with everybody for calling us like this. And then B, we're like, damn it, but I am like this. And I think it took me very long. The only reason I have become relatively good as this is because I have clinical depression and I went down the pit and I didn't have a choice but to get out of that pit. So now I've done all these things because I had to, which in some sense made it easier because I didn't have a choice. To survive, I needed to learn to regulate these things. But I think what you said is really helpful in the sense that realize that what you may be thinking is rest is not rest. So that you can actually identify rest versus not rest. So that you don't think, oh, I am resting, but it's not making me feel better. Sort of becoming aware of where you are on that spectrum, and then learning to build your resilience in the easiest first step way possible.
Yes.
Right?
Whatever is what is coming naturally to you. One thing that people don't often associate with sympathetic activity is choice.
Yes.
We feel like choice is good. But a choice is stressful.
Yes, that is true. So sometimes I can't color because I don't know which colors to use. But if I tell myself, this is the order in which the color pencils are laid. You just pick this one up and then that one and then that one. It really makes it less stressful.
Makes life easier. And that is a paradox of choice. And that is a paradox of freedom. So we think fundamentally that freedom is good, but is it?
It can be stressful.
It can be stressful. And so rituals are great for parasympathetic.
Right.
Just knowing that, acha, abhi Diwali aa raha hai, Diwali mein ye karna hai. These are the things that I have to do. Okay, now it's Holi. Okay, it's Christmas. I have these are the list of things. Every Sunday I will meet this friend for breakfast. Those rituals solve a lot of things. Whereas, who knows what I'm going to do this month sounds exciting, but it means there is choices to be made every single day.
And for the brain, it's uncertainty. And uncertainty is danger.
So it's not really freedom.
But I think the foundational understanding helps you navigate the situation better. Because from personal experience, I know that if you just slowed down a little, looked at yourself a little, got to know a little bit, and then just took it step by step, it's not so bad. And then once you get better at being healthy, it's actually fun.
It is.
To be a healthy person.
And it's not that difficult because all the tools are already inbuilt. Your body wants to regulate. If you can just get out of the way, it has all the algorithms. You're born with it. If you can just stop activating the sympathetic system for a while, it'll sort itself out.
And don't put too much blame on yourself because it's also the environment that is making you activate it.
It is.
But if we became mindful, maybe we could.
Yeah, I'm always I'm a neuro-optimist. I feel like the brain.
Got me hopeful. Yeah, we're hopeful. Great, thank you so much. One thing that we do, which you can totally say no, okay? is that I ask my guests if they're willing to make a pledge at the end of the episode. And when I say pledge, I mean it can be the smallest, chutkuest little thing on the planet. But basically anything, because I feel like being hopeful, great, but then you need to do a little bit of an action afterwards for it to stay hopeful and to actually get somewhere with the hope. So any small thing or big thing, please make big promises towards mental health, whatever. Any sort of pledge that you would like to make, either to make a healthier choice for yourself or a way in which you would like to help other people take a step towards a healthier mental health.
This is an easy one because I started journaling properly 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And it's been wonderful because I've spoken about it, and I used to write down stuff before, but now I figured out a system and it's been insanely fun. So what I did want to do was to share that more, just talk about some incidents that have happened in my life in my newsletter. So that's something that I probably will do more this year, because I'm definitely going to keep writing. So I might share certain stories, the negative ones, because everyone talks about the positive stuff that happens. But some struggles that I go through in that week, I would like to share more of that with the people who follow me. I feel like we are all learning together.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Ira Khan, and that was Call Me Hopeful with The Swaddle. To listen to more such episodes, subscribe to The Swaddle on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts from.